Hello guys, Praggnanandha bounced back brilliantly in Tata Masters Chess tournament to beat Nils Grandelius in a Grunfeld sideline. Well, it's slightly lengthy game and quite brilliant and interesting. So let's jump into it and see. Praggnanandha played d4 with white, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5, cd5, knight d5. We are witnessing the exchange variation of Grunfeld here. e4, knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, bishop g7. Nothing surprising so far, but now comes a small twist. Queen a4 check. Well, bishop c4 is the most common move here, but Praggnanandha chose queen a4 check. Let's see how things go from here. Knight d7, knight f3, castles, queen a3. Now here, white is trying to create difficulty in the standard pawn breaks. Well, in any case, black goes with c5. Of course, it's very important to play here c5. Otherwise, black cannot efficiently attack white's center. Bishop e2, white proceeds with normal development. b6, h4. Quite an aggressive and ambitious move here. And now this attempt of Praggnanandha is successful because Nils responds with e5. This is the first but very important and crucial mistake here. Actually, at this super grandmaster level, this can well be a decisive strategic mistake. Now let's see why this move is so wrong here. Well, after e5 and d5 which Praggnanandha played, now the center is closed here. In Grunfeld, the opening which Nils chose, black's strategy is to attack the center. But now in this structure, black has very little scope of successfully attacking white's center. So I believe that although engines don't show a very big advantage, a winning advantage to white here, but in my personal opinion, Praggnanandha won the game right here. He has a very significant advantage, well, considering the level at which he plays, because now the center is quite closed and strong for white, and there is very little hope that black can attack it successfully. So what was the better choice? Instead of e5, it was much better to play pawn takes pawn and pawn takes pawn. Now in this position, black has quite some hope of attacking the center, and the position is quite balanced and dynamic here. Okay, now he can proceed with h5 or something like that, or bishop b7 or knight c5. Even this is a very decent move, attacking the e4 pawn. So black has to try to attack the center, but somehow Nils made this mistake and he played e5, and white managed to close the center d5. From now on, we see that Praggnanandha exploits his dominance in center with ruthless expertise. Knight f6. Another small inaccuracy. The reason is that this allows white to play bishop g5. Now, what's the problem here? That after this move, white can exchange the bishop for knight here, and in this strategically close center, knight is very important. Bishops are not so efficient in dealing with closed centers as knight. So he should have kept the knight. And I believe that instead of knight f6, first h6 should have been played. Of course, engines also agree, but we have to take the opinion of the engine in such positions with a pinch of salt, because in these closed positions, the evaluations by engines are not fully accurate. Well, in any case, this h6, of course, the logic also says that h6 is better than knight f6, because now white cannot go for bishop g5 and exchanging the knight. Well, in any case, let us see what happened after knight f6, bishop g5, queen e8. Of course, the queen has to move out of the pin. Bishop take, now see, Praggnanandhaa didn't waste any time and he exchanged his bishop for the knight. Bishop takes bishop, h5, of course, he will go for attacking the king side. Bishop g4, knight d2. Now see, he cleverly avoided an exchange of his knight with bishop. Because as I said earlier, in these closed positions, knights are much better. Bishop d7, c4, further consolidating the center. Queen e7. Now he is trying to activate his bishop by bringing it to g5. Queen c3, attacking this e5 pawn. It will be very useful later. Bishop g7, queen e3, eyeing the crucial h6 square. f5, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. a4, again a very brilliant positional idea. Actually, uh, at the moment white has some ambitions on the king side, but although black is exposed on the king side, we cannot hope for a rapid fire checkmate there. So what Praggnanandhaa is doing, he is opening the queen side as well, and then he will try to see where he can get a breakthrough. It's also possible to use the queen side or king side, or a combination of both the sides, which he actually does in the game. A very clever strategy. Bishop f6, a5. He continues with the strategy of opening the queen side. Bishop g5. So he is trying to activate the bishop here. But this there is a demerit, that although the bishop is activated, but now the king side becomes very weak. Queen h3, queen g7. It's very important to defend these squares. Queen c3, queen f6, bishop d3, queen e7, knight f3. Of course, attacking the bishop as well as this very important e5 pawn. Bishop f6, black has to retreat. Queen c2, further attacking the f5 pawn. Rook a c8. Now this looks like another big mistake here, because this gives an opportunity to white to penetrate the queen side through the a5. ab6, ab6, castles, f4. So now black is trying to close the king side and keep his king safe. Rook a7. But now white can penetrate through the queen side, and this will prove decisive now. Queen d6, bishop e2, bishop d8, knight h2, bishop c7. Now the only use of this move is that it will protect this e5 pawn, and it will also avoid an attack from white rook to the king side. But Praggnanandhaa very successfully thinks of a very good idea here. Rook f to a1. Now he is doubling the rook here so that both the rooks can come to the 7th rank. King g7, bishop g4. Now again, strategically a very intelligent move, because after exchanging these light squared bishops, the knight will become very powerful. Bishop g4, knight g4. Now look at this knight here. It's so powerful because now it is the bishop, because black has a dark color bishop, so this bishop cannot threaten or dislodge the knight from here. Rook f7, f3. This is again a very good prophylactic move so that black can never play f3 and disturb kingside. Rook h8, trying to get some counterplay here, but now it is a case of too little too late. Queen b2, rook h5, rook b7, trying to double the rook on the 7th rank where they will be extremely powerful. Queen d8, rook a. Now just look here how dominating the position of white's rooks is. King g8, king f2. And now this is perhaps the only substandard move from Praggnanandhaa here. Now it's very surprising that a player of his class actually missed a very powerful move here, and that is queen a1. This move now threatens rook a8, and this queen is in danger. And now it looks very difficult at how black can successfully defend his fragile pieces here. The biggest threat here is rook a8, where the queen is in danger. So suppose, let us say, he goes for queen h4, trying to protect. Now, of course, rook takes bishop will be wrong because of this check, and then this rook. So knight f2 is a simple move, and now it is very difficult for black to protect this bishop because it is pinned, and then this rook on f7, it is also vulnerable. Well, in any case, Praggnanandhaa missed it and instead went for king f2, rook h1, rook a1, rook h4, rook c7, and exchange sacrifice. And now the reason is that white will uh, uh, attack the black center after this exchange sacrifice, and very soon black's position will crumble. Rook takes rook, queen e5, rook f7, queen e6. Now this g6 pawn is in danger, and this knight is also very powerful. So Nils returned the exchange. Rook takes knight, queen g4, king g7, queen e6, queen h4 check, king e2, queen g5, king f1, queen h4, king g1, queen f6, queen f6. So Praggnanandhaa goes for a simple exchange of queen because this endgame is a clear-cut victory for white. Actually, any player rated 2300 or above can defeat any grandmaster or even a super grandmaster from here easily. And of course, Praggnanandhaa is technically very good in endgames. King f6, king f2, e5. Now black is trying to attack the weak white pawns here, mainly the pawn on c4, but this idea is actually hopeless because these two pawns on e4 and d5, these two passed pawns are very strong. So even if black can come here on d4, he cannot take c4, king e2, king d4. So a useless try here. Rook d1 check. So king e5, he must return because if he goes for say something like king takes pawn, then this d6 pawn will simply march ahead. Sorry, d5 pawn will march ahead from d5 to d6. And now, how will he stop the pawn from queening, especially when it is supported by the other pawn? So like this, and now black can very well resign here. So after the check, rook d1, king e5. Actually, Nils could have easily resigned here, but as Bobby Fischer said, different people think differently about resigning. Rook a1, king d4, king e5, king d3, rook a7, king c3, g5, king b3, g4, d6, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, king e6, d7. So further simplification, Praggnanandhaa is sacrificing a pawn to enter a very simple king and pawn versus king and pawn ending rook takes pawn, rook takes rook, king a4, king c6 and e5. And here black resigned because of course he will have to play something like king d7 when king b5, king e6, king takes pawn, king takes pawn, king takes pawn. And now it is a very easy win for white. So a brilliant strategic victory for Praggnanandhaa, and let's see how he proceeds ahead. But I am sure that after this encouraging victory, he will improve his performance from now on and will end up with a very good score.